Here you go, she's here, with her Welshness for your ears, to read you what you think is nice, whether calm or funny or maybe spice. Her dog by her side calling cooches down, and Poppy, her old cat, curls up all round. In the evening, in the daytime, Welsh Lady reads to you anytime. She'll crack you up, she'll make you cry, you'll be wearing pants that are left undry. She's your very own Welsh Lady, and she's here to make you laugh, make you smile, make you weep, even send you off to sleep. Her family are sheep. Oh, she's Welsh Lady Reads. Yes, she's Welsh Lady Reads. You know you mean so much to her. She tells you in her comments here. She may sometimes struggle, she may fight, but chat is who gives her her might. Just don't cause the dragon flames, as then she's not playing games. In the evening, in the evening, in the daytime, Welsh Lady reads to you anytime. She'll crack you up, she'll make you cry, you'll be wearing pants that are left undry. She's your very own Welsh Lady, and she's here to make you laugh, make you smile, make you weep, even send you off to sleep. Her family are sheep. Oh, she's Welsh Lady Reads. Yes, she's Welsh Lady Reads. You know you mean so much to her. She tells you in her comments here. She may sometimes struggle, she may fight, but chat is who gives her her might. Just don't cause the dragon flames, as then she's not playing games. In the evening, in the evening, in the daytime, Welsh Lady reads to you anytime. She'll crack you up, she'll make you cry, you'll be wearing pants that are left undry. She's your very own Welsh Lady, and she's here to make you laugh, make you smile, make you weep, even send you off to sleep. Her family are sheep. Oh, she's Welsh Lady Reads. Yes, she's Welsh Lady Reads. Oh, she's your Welsh Lady Reads.
Hello, chat. How are you? Welsh Lady, you? I don't know why I say that. I think you know when you tune in it's going to be me. I just think it's a nice little introduction. Hello, chat. Welcome, new subscribers. I've seen my subscribers go up, and I'd like to say thank you very much. I appreciate you. And for those who double-checked that they were still subscribed because of YouTube being a hole, then, thank you. Thank you for doing that, and thank you very much. I appreciate it very much, I do. Today, chat, I thought we'd best get back to our book. And before I do, as you'll see on my community page, there is a poll. And there are 4 options of books there. And I'd really love it if you could go to the community page and pick which one you'd like to start, because I'm thinking of bringing in new books as we go along. I mean, you know, the tent as the tent icon, the folklore as the fairy icon, and we can just go parts 1 and 2, 3 in those. So it might be something different for everybody else, who may not be into this book but may prefer a different book. And also, I am still going to do special requests and all of that. So, yeah, pop along to the community page and click a selection that you wouldn't mind hearing. Little story. One of the books has something personal to me. It's not about me, but it has something personal to me. I wonder which one it is. I wonder if you can gather which one. But anyway, let's get back to all the goings on and the shenanigans of what's been happening with Emma and Brenda and Tony. Because last time they had me blooming gone. I was in stitches. So I'm going to pick up where I left off. But this will be part 9 or part 10. I think it's part 9. Maybe. I'll have to check and let you know. I'm losing track, chat. My brain is not wired properly to remember all this. But here we go. So, my father had been taking daily advice from a man called Dave Cox, who had been going to Spain for years in his caravan, had been preparing for our road trip to France for weeks. According to Dave Cox, food in France was A, extortionate, and B, inedible. Sounds brilliant. And that if my dad knew what he was doing, he would start stocking up on tin food immediately. To not do so would be a fool's path to the bottom of a stinking pond where only misery and pain would be our handmaidens. To this end, Tony had been methodically squirreling away tins of spam. Oh, not spam. Oh, God, I can't stand spam. Oh, but I don't know. This time, I always remember when I was a kid, it's saying spam, corned beef, silver skin onions, and piccalilli. Now, those 4 things would have been in my cupboards when I was a child. And, yeah, I don't know how I survived. I still do like silver skin onions, mind. I do. I like them on a salad. Okay. I also like pickled onion crisps, but that's just an aside. Every now and then, preferably Monster Munch, just to let you know. Every now and then, he would open a cupboard, stare at his hoard, and nod quietly, happy in the knowledge that he had hunted and gathered enough low-grade tinned meats and pickled vegetables to keep us afloat for a month. Saving money was now a priority. We had Bessie to pay for. My mother was preparing in different ways. Flushed with the glow of a trip to the continent, Brenda had concentrated her efforts not on what way we were going to eat, but on what she was going to wear. French women, she had heard, were sartorially elegant, and looking down at her cotton flares and cheesecloth top, she was pretty sure that, as things stood, she was offering little or no competition. "I've got nothing to wear," she declared, hands on hips. "I'm taking Emma to Biba," a phrase that my father, whose grip on the family wallet was vice-like, dreaded. Biba is a department store in London like no other before or since, was a sensation. It was and still is the most exotic shop I have ever been in. The interior Excuse the motorbike interrupting us, going past. Windows not even open. Can hear everything where I live, see? That's where I get the gossip on the way up from the pub. Or usually the arguments. I've even trained Colin, my Iggy, to know that they're just drunk people. And then he looks up and I go, it's just drunk people. Anyway, sorry. I digress. The interior was extraordinary. Black walls swallowed up the sharp floor, across which were dotted mirrored pillars with dark, plump banquets lazing about their bases. Ebony peacock feathers plumed out of every corner, and pencil-thin shop assistants stared out from behind their counters with expressionless, effortless style. It was like stepping into a Bob Fosse musical. We only went there a few times. The store had to close because people were just going there to stay, not to buy. I've done that before now. But its impression was indelible. The corridor that turned with every step from night to day and delivered you into the children's department with its giant record player where you could stand on the record as it turned, and the restaurant where you could eat curried eggs and potato gratin with its white grand piano and the man playing a violin who was so old he looked as if he was made from tissue paper. What a description. An old man who looks like he's made from tissue paper. Despite our family funds being severely curtailed, my mother had decided that our first trip abroad was an occasion so special that budgets could go hang. No, Brenda, my father would say, swiftly followed by a high pitch, look at the price of it, and a frantic point of his finger. To this my mother would stop, throw him the coldest of stares, and just say, Tony, in a sharp slap of exclamation that could leave no one in any doubt that if she wanted it, she was going to have it. After protracted negotiation, she came away with a cord jacket and a pair of striped mules. I got a pack of cards. Tony got nothing. My mother was dressed to the nines for our inaugural voyage on a cross-channel ferry. Decked out in her recent beaver purchases, she had finished the outfit off with some large Bridge Bardot sunglasses. She was delirious with joy. By the end of the day, we would be in France. France. Because my hair was still growing back from the impetigo incident. There was little if no point in putting me in anything other than a pair of shorts and a striped roll-neck jumper. Everyone thought I was a little boy, so I might as well dress like one. Still, we had polished the look off with a pair of rather natty flip-flops. I was feeling more European with every step. But did they have socks? Because that's just the top. Flip-flops and people. When you see on holidays, you see people in flip-flops and socks, white socks. I always wonder. I think, no, flip-flops. You don't wear socks, but quite often I see it. It's very weird. I was feeling more European than with every step. Dad, who had seen most of the holiday funds slip through his fingers and washed away on a tide-cold fashion, could only pack the back of Bessie with military precision, and thank God for Dave Cox. By sticking to our tin diet, we might get home with a penny in our pocket. In terms of family politics, it was important for Tony to take small triumphs where he could. The packing of Bessie, which had assumed the sacred mysteriousness of the virgin birth, was for my father his greatest achievement to date. Having measured her internal dimensions, he had worked out on a piece of graph paper what would go where and on top of what. He's gone a bit mad over this, hasn't he? The base of the rear section would be laid with the large blue bag that held the tent, the long orange bag that held the tent rods, and the small white bag that looked after the mallet and the pegs. One layer up, like a holiday lasagna, would be more solid campaign equipment: the stove, the gas bottle, which attached to the stove, the water carrier, the table, the chairs, and the Mildred's bucket. On top of that lay the suitcases, of which there were many. We were going to France after all. And on top of that were the sleeping bags, the pillows, and the duvets. Last but not least was me. I would not be sitting in Bessie. I would be lying tossed on top of the rest of the gear, horizontal and sunken into a perfectly arranged trough, at the end of which would be provided a convenient heap of books, toys and comics. Oh, sounds brilliant. Comics, thus ensuring my total silence for the entirety of the journey. That's not likely, is it? Imagine being just up in some cubby hole, cut down with your books when you... Oh, I did love that. It was my father's grandest design, and for every year that we had her, that same piece of graph paper would be produced and followed with great solemnity until Bessie was full to bursting. We were sailing from Southampton to Cherbourg. 6-hour crossing that, as far as we were concerned, was going to be as exciting as a carpet ride into outer space. The ferry port was a slithering snake of vehicles, all creeping slowly towards a fat man in a fluorescent jacket who was shaking everyone down according to size. As we sat crawling towards the fat man, Tony was in a sweaty stew. His concern whether or not Bessie would pass the height requirement. If she failed, we'd have to pay more, and to be honest, if we did have to pay more, then our holiday, according to my father, was content warning, fucked from the off. This holiday was going to have to be reined in on the tightest of shoestrings, and in 1973, when no one had credit cards, our holiday funds were limited to the cash in my father's pocket. "Everyone smile nicely now at the man," whispered my father from the corner of his mouth, the smell of fear wafting off him. My mother, thinking that just looking glamorous might save the day, dripping herself in a devastating relaxed sprawl, arms draped outwards and head to one side, presenting a vision of nonchalance to which nothing bad could possibly happen. "You're an inch over," said the fat man. "You'll have to pay the surcharge." "But it's only an inch, officer," pleaded my mother. "Does it really count?" "I'm afraid so, madam," said the man, "and I'm not an officer." "Oh, God," moaned my father, shoulders slumping. "How much is it?" £50, sir," said the man, consulting a clipboard. "Oh, God," said my father again. £50, squealed Brenda, "for an inch." Oh, chat. Oh, chat. £50 for an inch. "My dad," I said, suddenly piping up from the back, "says if we have to go..." Oh, here we go. "My dad," I said, suddenly piping up from the back, "says if we have to pay more money, we're fucked from the off." Everyone turned and looked at me. startled at the unexpected profanity. My mother, wide-eyed and startled, opened her mouth to remonstrate, but was stopped by the fat man, who was laughing his head off. "Did he now?" he howled. "Oh, go on then, off you go. Follow the yellow line there, please, sir, and park up behind the caravans. Have a nice holiday." We should try that, chat. No, I don't promote children swearing. No, but that's hilarious. He let him on. As we drove off, showering thanks as we went, the fat man was still laughing and shaking his head. My mother twisted round and looked at me and said, "Well done, Emma." She grinned, eyebrows shooting up from behind her glasses. Well done. But then, thinking about that for a moment, she added, "But don't say that again. Swearing is very naughty." "No, it bloody isn't," yelled my father, grinning. "You can swear as often as you like." He's a cheapskate, is out, Tony. I lay back into my trough, feeling pleased with myself and happy. Not only have I saved the day, but I was now allowed to swear. This holiday was starting brilliantly. The industrial doors to the lower decks of the Townsend Thorson Free Enterprise ferry were locked during the voyage, while the upper decks played host to duty-free shops, bars, lounges and restaurants. We had gone up to the outer deck to watch as we left port. A smell of salt and diesel raged in my nostrils, and the deep roar of the ship's engines vibrated up through my feet. It was my first time at sea, and as I clung to the railings, I leant over to stare at the water as it chopped away from the hull. We were lucky. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful sunny day, and the sea was a mill pond. We stood and watched as England disappeared into the horizon, the sea wind fingering through our hair, and the last sliver of land slipped into an endless expanse of blue. We turned our attentions to something far more pressing: lunch. "Would you like to try our Scandinavian smorgasbord?" asked the steward. I don't know whether I've said that right, but I don't know, I'm not posh. Gesturing towards the heaving table. "A smorgasbord?" trilled Brenda, peering in at the banquet on offer. "Is that where you pay and then you can eat as much as you like? I've never had one of those." "You can eat it as much as you like?" asked Tony, eyebrows knotting in disbelief. "That can't be right." "No," said the steward. "Your wife is right. You can go back as many times as you like. Just pay for the plate and help yourself." Well, I never knew that. I'm learning something new here. See, that's what a smorgasbord is. It's a buffet. It's a buffet where everyone goes up and just grabs what they want and keeps going back up. Astonished and tiptoeing, we might as well have been handed swag bags and asked to help ourselves to the crown jewels. We stood, plates in hand, and stared at the bank of food laid out before us. There was every conceivable cold meat, layered in towers, neat rows of filleted fish, pyramids of tomatoes, shelves of sliced cucumbers, and bowl after bowl of dressed salads, creamy coleslaws, potato salads sprinkled with chives, coronation chicken that was so yellow it looked radioactive, half eggs filled with spiced mayonnaise, and grapefruit hedgehogs pierced with cheese, and pineapple chunks on cocktail sticks. There was so much to choose from, it was impossible to know where to start. But my mother, who always had an eye for the expensive, had her sights on one thing: "Oh my God," she breathed, gasping. "There's smoked salmon, Tony. They've got smoked salmon." Smoked salmon, eh? No, I get excited over smoked salmon. No sooner had Brenda seen it, but she was out of the traps and on it, shoveling it onto a plate with an air of the frantic, until her plate was so heaped with smoked salmon there was little room for anything else. My father, convinced if he played this right it was going to be the deal of the century, had piled his plate high with every meat on offer, and had created a salad-based volcano that threatened to spew itself over every surface. I had decided to take a more practical approach. I would only put on my plate anything that I knew I liked, so I just picked up the cheese and pineapple grapefruit hedgehog and put the whole thing on my plate. We had taken enough food to feed a family of 10, and this was our only our first visit to the table. "Can you believe this?" said my dad, mouthful and gesturing towards his slurry of food with a fork. "And we get to go back. Be sure and go back, mind. We get to go back." My mother, who was breaking out in a sweat as she troughed down on her excess amount of salmon, came up for air. "I don't know if I can, Tony," she panted. "I'm stuffed. But you've got to go back, Brenda. We've paid for the plate. That's the whole point of a smorgasbord. You've got to go back." My mother, with determination of a wounded soldier, dragged herself back to the table, half-heartedly tossed some beef onto her plate and slapped on an accompaniment of coleslaw, and then staggered her way back, throwing the plate down on the table. She then sat, cheeks bloated and burping, oh gosh, and made a short stab at squeezing some beef into her mouth before throwing down her cutlery, collapsing headfirst onto the table and conceding that she was now so full that she was giving serious consideration to the afterlife. I too was struggling, stuffed full of cheese and pineapple chunks, and had leant back in my chair with my arms hanging hopelessly down in a vain attempt to aid digestion. As I looked round the restaurant, I realised that everyone was similarly swollen to bursting. People were slumped in chairs, broken by excess of protein and salad dressings. One girl caught my eye. She was a little older than me, and she was wearing a pink tracksuit. Her hair was scraped back from her face, tied up into pigtails, and as she pushed her plate away from her, she assumed a facial greyness, not unlike a piece of cod that had been left out for a week. This lunch would be the end of us all. "I don't ever want to eat again as long as I live," moaned my mother, half dribbling onto the tablecloth. "Thank God the sea's not choppy," commented my father as he waddled our way out to the shops. "Can you imagine?" But I couldn't imagine. I'd never been on a ferry before. So far, so good. Our holiday was going so well that Tony, in a fit of excitement, had bought a giant Toblerone to celebrate. My mother was in her element, and that's when Toblerones were the right size. I just want to put that in there, because Toblerones now are much smaller and not as many cubes of, well, triangles of Toblerone. I'm not happy about that situation. Same like a Cadbury's cream egg. They have really shrunk. They're not as big as they used to be. Just want to put that out there. That's just a little gripe of mine. But, every year I still get each a Toblerone. My mother was in her element, awash with a buzzing sense of achievement, and I was buzzing, bouncing with anticipation that within a matter of hours I was going to be in a different country. I didn't know anything about France, and my only experience of it was reading the Barbara the Elephant books that my mother had told me were French. As the new coast came into view, part of me half hoped to see elephants on bicycles, but sadly that childish fancy would never be satisfied. What I did know, however, were two sentences taught to me by my mother. The first was a catch-all to get me out of any manner of scrapes. Excusez-moi, mais je ne parle pas le français. And the second was, as far as my mother was concerned, more important than breathing. Où est la toilette, s'il vous plaît? That was it. That was all I was going to be able to say. As we pulled into Cherbourg, a tannoy announced, booming out, telling us we were allowed to return to our vehicles. And with a genuine sense of expectation, we followed the long line of families worming their way back down through the boat to the car deck. Because the stairways were so narrow, there was a traffic jam of bodies waiting to squeeze themselves into the stairwell. My parents were immediately in front of me, and as I looked behind me, I realised I was in front of the girl in the bright pink tracksuit. The ship, which was still reversing into port, was heaving and started with thick shudders, sending deep resonating judders that rattled into my rib cage. Whether it was the frequency of the ship's final tremors or just the result of a very long sea voyage, we will never know. But at that moment, as the ship emitted a particular deep gut-churning grumble, the girl in pink vomited all down my leg. Oh my God, no, that's not what you want when you're in a crowded staircase. We won't anyway, but oh no, said the girl's mother, as I stood horror-struck staring at my splattered leg. The girl had a hand to her mouth, and by the look of her, I wasn't entirely convinced that she was all done. Tony, turning around to see what the waft of puke was coming from, saw the state I was in and automatically assumed that I was the culprit. Oh dear, he said, putting a hand on my shoulder and nudging my mother with the other. Probably all those cheese and pineapple chunks. Traumatised by the fact that I was actually covered with someone else's sick, I could only shake my head. Thankfully, the girl's mother piped up. No, it was Melissa. She's not a good traveller. I'm very sorry about your son's trousers. Will he be all right? My father was standing next to a particularly unflattering light, the sort that lays bare the soul of anyone who come near it, and as the woman nodded in my direction and assumed I was a boy, I could see the flicker of a decision settling itself into his eyes. Sometimes things just weren't worth explaining, and as I stood and watched, my father returned the woman's gaze and said, "Don't worry, you'll be fine," and then pushed me towards my mother. "I've got sick on my leg," I whined as she helped me out to look at me. "I don't believe this," said my mother. "Will she be able to get changed, Tony? Where are the clothes packed?" "Third layer up," said Tony, sucking breath into his teeth like a builder trying to break bad news. "And we won't be able to get anything out, not until we're off the boat. We'll have to wait till we get to a lay-by or a motorway service station. I haven't even got any tissue on me, have you?" My mother shook her head. "And she'll have to sit in the front with us. She can't lie out in the back. She'll get sick on all the bedding. Oh, it smells awful." By now, I was leaning into my mother face first and clinging to her cord jacket. I didn't look down, then perhaps it wasn't there, but the damp stickiness that was creeping down my leg and the acrid stench of vomit snapped me back to reality. I had the stomach contents of a constitutionally challenged girl in a pink tracksuit dripping down my leg, and there was no hope of being cleaned up within the next half hour. This was my welcome to France. I was crying by the time we reached Bessie. Not girly, frivolous tears. It was something more broken, more withered and torn. Like Sisyphus, the man condemned to forever roll the... I thought that said something else then, Chart. The man condemned to forever roll the stone up the hill, only to have it roll back down again. I could see no end to my misery. I was on an infinite treadmill of misfortune, and all I could foresee was an endless melancholic wretchedness. "Come on," said my mum, hugging me to her. "As soon as we can stop, we'll wash you down and get you changed. Don't worry. What an awful thing to happen. Just awful." I was in such despair that I didn't even pay attention to the moment Bessie clanked off the ship's ramp and onto French soil. We had made it, and I didn't care. Only two things could reverse my agony: a power hose and disinfectant. "I must remember to drive on the right," said my dad, widening down his window to get some air into the car. "Don't forget to tell me to drive on the right. Drive on the right. Drive on the right." "I think our first priority is getting Emma clean, Tony," said Brenda, a little strained. "So you can drive on the right as much as you like, as long as you drive us straight to a toilet." "Will la toilette, s'il vous plaît?" I sobbed, gripping my mother's arms. "Yes," nodded my mother, squeezing my shoulder. "Will la toilette, s'il vous plaît? That's right." My mother, trying to keep my mind occupied, made small valiant attempts to get me to look out the window. "Look at that, Emma," she said, giving my hand a tap. "There's a French shop, and that's a French car, and that's a French man." But I wasn't interested. My head was glued into my mother's armpit, the only haven from my immediate horrors. To make matters worse, everywhere seemed to be shut. We'd arrived in France during the long, languid lunch break that everyone seemed to indulge in, and as we drove through Cherbourg, it became increasingly clear that my rescue... Car driving by with loud music. Don't get me shut down now, mind. Gone past now. Gone past. I know, Col, I know. Naughty drivers, I know. But you don't need to put your paw in my face. Thank you very much. Good boy. And that's a French car and that's a French man. But I wasn't interested. My head was glued into my mother's armpit, the only haven from my immediate horrors. To make matters worse, elsewhere, every... I'm really sorry, chat. But my Colin, my dog, for anyone who knows, every time I turn away from him, sticks his paw in my face as if to say, "No, talk to me." Or nagging kisses on the arm. Okay, right, now pour out the face. Okay, lie back down. No, pour in face. Call, I'm trying to read you to my chat, man. Oh, thank you for the kisses. That's nice. That's lovely. You're a good boy. Now pour out the face. Thank you. Oh, I just let him lick my hand. That'll be fine. If you hear any noise, that'll be fine. That's what's going on. Sorry, chat. Oh, so to To make matters worse, everywhere seemed shut. Oh, we'd already gone to that part, man. See, Colin's now interrupted me reading and I don't know where I am. Oh. Okay, we'd arrived during that long lunch break, yeah? Okay, it became increasingly clear that my rescue would be some time coming. In fact, we had to drive for a good 20 minutes before my father, spotting a lay-by with some rest facilities, screeched into it and slammed on the brakes. Brenda took me by the hand and walked me toward an oblong concrete toilet block that I could smell from the moment we stepped out of the car. Years of neglect had taken their toll. There were no discernible signs of upkeep, bins exploding with rubbish and a wet, overpowering smell of sewage. The door in the ladies' block was heavy and metallic, the handle crusted with an unidentifiable solid green matter that crumbled into the hand, and as my mother opened it, an overpowering yet anonymous stench punched us in the face, just a bit like my dog calling me then. Right, he's going to bed now, so go on then, into bed. There you go. There we are, child. Just have a little drink of water whilst we just think of Emma and Brenda in the stinky, fouly toilets. How wonderful. What a great start to landing in another country. I say landing, I suppose. Docking into another country. Okay. It was the sort of smell you could taste, and both of us instinctively covered our mouths with a hand. Our other problem was that as soon as the heavy door clanged shut behind us, we couldn't see a thing. It was pitch black, a thick, stinking darkness like finding yourself at the bottom of a cesspit. Goodness, exclaimed Brenda, startled by the depth of black. There must be a light in here somewhere. And her hand fell away from mine. Disorientated by my albeit temporarily but total blindness, I put my arms out and shuffled forwards. I could hear my mother to the left running her hand over surfaces and muttering about how she couldn't find the door, and that if we both just stood very still, then maybe our eyes would adjust to the lack of light. I was still shifting forwards, fingers aloft, when the tips came up against something cold and metallic. Applying pressure, the surface, which I could only assume was a door into a toilet, pushed away from me. Another powerful, reeking wave slapped up at me and pulling the neck of my jumper up over my nose. I made small steps forwards, letting out a small muffled shout. I said, I think I found a toilet. Is there a sink? Called out my mother, having a feel around. Again, moving slowly, I reached forward. My arms waved into an empty space, bending my knees. I waved my arms lower, hoping at least to locate the toilet. If I could place that, then the sink, if there was one, would be off to one side. But there was nothing there. Concluding that I must be in a large, long cubicle, I stood up and took a large stride forward. The edge of my flip-flop hit a ridge. Having not expected to come up against a small but significant raised surface, I stumbled, my body weight surging forward. My right leg, which had been trailing, automatically flung itself forward to stop me falling over, but as my foot came down, it sank away from me, plunged me down into a stinking hole that sent me tipping over to the right. An overwhelming smell of feces flooded over me. Oh my gosh, no! Oh, this is gross. An overwhelming smell of feces flooding over me, and my right leg felt as if it was submerged in thick, sticky mud. Except it wasn't mud. I had found the toilet. Oh, poor Emma. Half a fallen leg burst into the Turk-style hole in the ground toilet. So favoured by the French, there was little I could do other than scream and suck myself back out of it. My right flip-flop was gone, my leg covered in shit. So just to recap, like we need to recap on it, chat. I had someone else's vomit on my left leg and a whole host of strangers' shit on my right. Oh no. Horrified and in shock, all I could do was scrabble backwards, struck down with panic, my heart pounding, the breath catching in my throat, my head pumping with a white searing fear that felt as if my brain was boiling. As a child, I was not naturally given to hysterics, but in that moment, as I felt my mother's hand on my arm, her voice shouting through the deep fog of disaster, and felt the outside light stabbing in as my father opened the door to see what was going on, I felt the eyes roll up into my forehead and I passed out. She fainted. Oh. I came round lying on the floor by the bins. My shorts were being pulled off me by my mum and my dad, acknowledging that this was a bona fide emergency. I'd unpacked 2 layers of camping gear to get to the towels. I was catatonic, my breathing shallow. My parents were talking urgently and loudly, but I couldn't take in anything they were saying. Their words were blurred away by the unfolding childhood trauma that was sending my mind spinning. I had fallen into a toilet, a filthy, stinking hellhole of a toilet. My nostrils were screaming and I could feel shit between my toes. The tears were pouring down my face and I was making no noise apart from the occasional broken down that pushed itself up from my guts and moaned out in ungodly grief. With nothing liquid to wash me with, my dad scraped up my legs with the towel. Oh no, Tony! Until they felt as if they were burning. My mother, having thrown my shorts in the bin behind me, was kneeling by my head, stroking my hair and holding my hand. I was vaguely aware of my father's expression, a look of such intense revulsion that his face was contorted into a look of extreme pain. He was doing his best, but we needed to get to soap and water. If we put her in a bin bag, suggested my mother. You can't put a child in a bin bag. Oh my God. If we put her into a bin bin bag, suggested my mother, pointing to the back of the Land Rover. Then we can drive on to a proper service station, a garage. Anyway, we've got to get her washed. Jesus Christ, why does this only happen to us? Why? My dad, stopping what he was doing and holding out the shit-stained towel, stood up and looked down at me. Wrap her legs in a bin bag. Yeah, come on, Em. We can get through this. We can. We're tossing the foul-smelling towel over in the direction of the bin. Tony paced the back of the Land Rover after wiping his hands on a small patch of dried-up grass on the roadside. He dug into the rear of the car and pulled out a large black plastic bag. Flicking it open, he hooked on one end under my feet, slid the bag up to my waist, and gathered the ends together where he tied them into a chunky knot. My lower limbs were sealed in. Crying and incapable, they stood me up and carried me to the car. Disgusting wafts of hot, stinking air pumping up from the bag's edges, with both my parents' heads hanging out the windows and retching. We screamed off. Soap and water is all we wanted. My deliverance came in the shape of an unshaven man in oil-stained overalls. Having pulled into a garage and bundled me out of the car, my father, carrying me over his shoulder, had run to the rear of the building where he found the proprietor sitting under a shaded veranda with a glass of lunchtime wine in his hand. A fat, dusty saucisson sat on a plate in front of him. The pale skins heaped into a tiny mound of ossicles, yelled my father, then pointing towards me, ma fille fell down la toilette. No sneed. Ew, pour le washing. Hey, chat, I'm trying my hardest at French here, right? Any Frenchies, I apologise for butchering the language. I got grade A French in school. Can't remember any of it now. Well, a little bit, but you know. And so, added my mother, who was fast on our heels. Oui, yelled my dad, nodding his head with urgency. Et aussi le soap. The man sat and stared at us. A mad Englishman. A mad English family had descended on his lunch hour, and he wasn't remotely interested. Ferme, he mumbled with a small wag of his ferme. Je mange ferme, monsieur ferme. Mais je le file, implored my father, putting me down and pointing at my weeping face. Has had un accident dans la toilette. Elle est covered in mud. We need to push hose or something pour la lava. De la jambes, le push. S'il vous plaît, added my mother, because manners are manners. Sensing that something was very wrong, although he would never know what, the man stuck his bottom lip out and blew a small exasperated puff, tapping a thick and filtered cigarette out of his crumpled packet in his overalls. He tossed it into his mouth and stood up, lighting the cigarette. He then stuck his hands into his pockets and gestured with his head towards a standing pipe, to which a thin red hose was attached. Voila, he said in a deep rumble, cigarette stuck to his lip. Pour le push, hein? Oh, thank God, exclaimed my mother, pacing towards it. Merci, monsieur, merci beaucoup. Quick, Tony, get the bag off her. Up until this point, I hadn't registered the weather. a dry sucking heat that had turned my legs into boil-in-the-bag monstrosities. Although my father had done his very best with the towel, the stench of something biblical burst out as he ripped the bag open, a plume of stinking vapour hissing into the air. My legs, covered in angry brown streaks, had turned unpleasant, sickly white, and were peppered with greasy beads of sweat. If I could, I would have peeled my skin off with a rabbit knife there and then. At that moment, it was inconceivable that I would ever be clean again. The water from the hose was freezing, but it brought a welcome numbness that enabled me to distance myself from my immediate physical predicament. If I concentrated on the stinging cold, then I could forget why I was standing there in the first place. I had fallen into a toilet. I had actually fallen into a toilet. As my parents hosed and scrubbed me, I could hear cicadas singing in the grass. See the unshaven man smoking his cigarette, and off in the distance 2 boys cycling circles in the dust. The world was carrying on as if nothing had happened. I had fallen into a toilet, and everything had not come to a grinding halt. The earth had not fallen off its axis, and the universe clicked on. My mishap was as nothing in the scheme of things. It was my first lesson in insignificance. I was placed in a clean pair of shorts and given a bottle of fizzy orange by the unshaven man. We drove in silence. I never wanted to go into a public toilet again. Well, I gotta be fair, chat, right? That has cracked me up. That's their first entry into France. She's covered in shit. Oh, can you imagine, falling down an hole like that and then, I don't want to. Well, thank you, chat, for tuning in and listening. I appreciate you very much. Please like and subscribe this video on your way out if you haven't already. And we'll see what happens on the next part of the French trip when we return back to the shenanigans of Emma and Brenda and Tony. I don't know what the thumbnail's gonna look like on this one. I better start designing. Oh, chat. Oh, love you as always. You take care now.
Welsh Lady reads.
Ta-da!
Oh, she's your Welsh Lady reads.